Okay, so I'm doing this in a little bit of a different format than my usual videos because I wanted to be able to share with you some charts that I think are helpful for understanding what's currently happening in the housing market. So the last few months, we've seen just an incredible variety of different market conditions, really some of the fastest changes in both directions than what we would expect to see in what we would say is the normal housing market. So things are definitely different than what they were a year ago. And they're also very different in the beginning of May here than they were, beginning of June, sorry, missed a whole month there. They're very different here at the beginning of June than they were in May, April, or March. So I wanted to take a minute to answer some questions that we've been getting and give you some data on what we're seeing in the housing market and also my thoughts on it. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. So here we're looking at specifically the market trends from Bright MLS, which is our database of properties that we use as real estate agents. And so this data has been really helpful throughout the pandemic to be able to track what's happening in the market. And so there's a few key points that I want to touch on. So this is weekly new listings. This is the number of properties that are either coming on the market as active or coming soon. And we can see that throughout March and April, these numbers were lower than what we would expect, but now we are solidly above where things were in 2019. And we're continuing to see this number go up every week. And that's a good sign because that means that more sellers are deciding it's a good time to list their houses for sale. And for buyers, they definitely want to see that. Next thing we're going to look at is new purchase contracts. And so this is one of the metrics that fell significantly kind of in the peak of the stay-at-home days, where we just had less buyer activity, fewer contracts, and this number has continued to go up. There is some week-to-week fluctuation, which is normal. Even in 2019, you can see some weeks were just lower than others. Maybe it was a rainy weekend. But we saw for May 25th that the orange is 2020 and the blue is 2019. So we saw for the first time the week of May 25th that this was equal to 2019 numbers, and June 1st, a little bit lower, but still definitely going in the right direction and looking like we're going to be continuing in an upward direction. Weekly number of listings changing to temporarily off status. So in 2020, this is the orange, we had a big spike in these at the beginning of the stay-at-home orders. Naturally, people wanted to kind of push pause, see what was going to happen before going back on the market. We've seen the number of listings changing to temporarily off really go down to just slightly above where they were last year and really pretty consistent numbers. So I would say we expect that to continue. The weekly number of new closed listings. So this is something where in 2020, we're still well below where we were in 2019, but I think it's important to remember that closings happen 4 weeks after a contract. And so with the number of new contracts increasing every week, we should expect to see these numbers kind of 4 weeks behind. So I do think that we will continue to see these numbers improve every week. There's a few other possible reasons why the number of new closings is down, and it's hard to say exactly, but I think just a matter of time. I think a month from now, we'll see this much closer to the 2019 numbers. Last but not least, one of the metrics that's been really helpful for us to track is showing activity. So this isn't necessarily like all showing activity, but this is all showing activity using Showing Time, which is a showing service that most real estate agents use, and all should, because this data is very helpful. Also, it's just really makes it easy to show houses, but that's a whole separate topic. So here we saw towards the middle of May that the number of showing requests actually reached equal numbers to 2019 after being very low here throughout March and April. And now we're well ahead of where the showing requests were in 2019. And one of the reasons I think for this, why these numbers are higher, is one, could be just built up demand, like buyers who weren't active in March and April are now active. Another reason could be because we're not having open houses. So really, or we're not yet having in-person open houses. There are virtual open houses, but if a buyer wants to see a home in person, really the best way for them to do that is by scheduling an appointment so that they are sure that they're going to be the only ones at the home. And with that, I think there might be more showing requests where some buyers would have otherwise chosen to visit open houses during the weekend. So that's what we're seeing in terms of the data. I think the data always is a little bit of a lag to what we actually see happening in the market. And right now I see some very distinct trends, specifically in the single family and row house markets, where it seems like inventory is very, very low. And one of the ways that I look at that is by comparing the number of active listings that fit a specific set of criteria with the number of pending listings. And we're seeing in a lot of the more popular markets that those are very even. You know, if there's 30 active listings, there's 30 or more under contract listings. So that indicates actually unbalanced supply and demand. That indicates the demand is greater than the supply. So for sellers, if you're thinking about selling, now is a great time. For buyers, I think that the future is bright. I think that we've had like a really tumultuous few months, and it does feel for a lot of buyers that this is just an insanely competitive market. I think that we're going to see that ease as we go into July, August, September. It's hard to say exactly what that timing will be, but I would tell buyers that have time to be patient. There's a lot of people that really want to get out of their current living situations and are maybe more motivated than they otherwise would have been. We probably have actually more people looking to buy than we otherwise would have had there not been the pandemic. At least that's my opinion. I don't have data to support that, but that's kind of what I'm hearing. A lot of my clients are people who, you know, they weren't, where the stay-at-home has really been a driving factor in encouraging them to move. And that could just be the demographics of the clients that I'm currently working with. On the selling side, I think we have sellers that are also cautious about selling if they also need to buy, and feeling some uncertainty about whether or not they're going to be able to find the house that they want to buy. And I think that a lot of this will work its way out over the next few months. But in any event, the market's strong. And I think that whether you're buying or selling, it's not a bad time to get started. And if you have any questions about this, or if there's any specific neighborhood level data that you'd like, please don't hesitate to reach out.